The Buddha said that we don't experience true happiness in our life. We find that even as our material environment becomes more comfortable, or generally we feel some kind of success in our life, that it doesn't really quite work. There's something not quite right. There's some sense of lack. And the Buddha said it's like you've got a bucket, or you've got some kind of a container with a hole in it, and the more you tip in, and the more it just runs away. So the Buddha is not overlooking the importance of life in the world and how we behave. Far from it. But he's saying ultimately the most important thing is that we deal with our own heart, our own mind. And so the Buddha gave us many skillful means to deal with the way our minds are, looking at the way we create suffering for ourselves, the way we can alleviate that suffering. And in that spiritual development that the Buddha spoke about, he emphasized two different sides of the same coin, if you like. One side is the tranquility, peace, stability of mind, and the other side is clarity and penetration and looking clearly at what's what. And those two things can't really be separated. And so Buddhist meditation is aimed at finding ways to let go or abandon wrong ways of thinking, dealing constructively with negative emotions until the mind reaches a point of clarity and peace, which it has sufficient power, brightness, clarity, integrity to look very closely at the way things are. And it's this looking, this seeing the way things are, which is essential to Buddhist meditation, Buddhist cultivation. There's not really a word for meditation in the Pali language as such. The word that we use is pavana, which means cultivation. And I think it's an important point because if we don't really understand the way that meditation is integrated into the general spiritual cultivation, which includes our relationship to the material world, the relationship to the people around us, then it can fail to fulfill the characteristics needed for it to be Buddhist meditation. So Buddhist meditation consists of techniques, methods of developing or cultivating wholesome mental states and abandoning unwholesome mental states in order to provide the foundation for the development of wisdom. So ultimately wisdom cultivation is the goal, because the Buddha taught us that whereas peaceful, sublime mental states can suppress, very successfully suppress, and for long periods, unwholesome mental states, it's only the faculty of wisdom that can totally uproot them. Now before that kind of foundation of clarity, peace, inner integrity can be sustained sufficiently for this wisdom faculty to do its work, then the cultivation of our life in the world, as they say, our relationship both to the material and to the social world, is very important. Firstly, to create a sense of security and harmony in the social world, and secondly, so that we are not troubled by thoughts of remorse and guilt over our actions and speech. This becomes very clear when we start to meditate, because certain kinds of behavior and ways of speaking, which generally we might not think were particularly blameworthy, are just the way that everybody acts and speaks. when you start to meditate, you become very much more sensitive to the quality of actions, and the mind can be considerably disturbed by things we've done or not done, things we've said or not said. And it's again worthwhile remembering that if you're trying to meditate and you're having difficulties, and you probably will to begin with at least, then the problems that you're arising are not enemies and not signs that you're hopeless, but they are teaching you about particular imbalances or often a lack of clear understanding of the most intelligent way to conduct your life in society. So I was talking about the importance of scrupulousness and interest in cultivating the quality of one's relationships in the material and social world as a way of creating the foundations for success in meditation, and that often the difficulties in meditation are not so much difficulties of technique or lack of information as a lack of application on the preparatory stages, particularly in one's daily life. Sila and the training of conduct is something that has to be taken upon skillfully and also with enthusiasm and interest. It's not something that is imposed upon you from outside. It has to be seen as a kind of training. And the ability to see it in that way depends on a certain amount of thought and investigation and use of the wisdom faculty on an initial level. And as you keep the precepts and use them as tools to develop mindfulness and restraint of conduct, then your ability to see things clearly becomes enhanced. So the Buddha said, it's as if you wash your left hand with your right hand and your right hand with your left. The sila cleanses the wisdom faculty cleanses the sila. So as regards the actual meditation practice itself, I would like to really stress this point that a lot of your experience in the meditation session, sitting on the meditation cushion or whatever, is going to be strongly influenced by what you're doing in the rest of the day. That if you are not putting forth effort to be present to your experience, to be clear and awake in your daily life, then it's going to be highly difficult to have that kind of presence of mind, clarity and wakefulness, which are absolutely essential for meditation. Because the peace that arises in Buddhist meditation is not some kind of a dull, flowery, kind of dreamy kind of state. It's the antithesis of that. It's absolute kind of clarity. It's not staring at a meditation object. It's learning to be with a meditation object. And if you can find a way of understanding what you're doing, in other words, of being with a meditation object such as the breath in a way that you prefer to be with your meditation object to being with thoughts of the past, thoughts of the future, fantasies and imagination, then you're well on the way to experiencing some of the fruits of meditation. So it's not sort of forcing your mind to concentrate on something, but it's finding a way of enjoying that meditation object in a very clear, balanced, bright, wakeful way, to the extent that you're not drawn and attracted to anything else. So I want to say something about mindfulness and its close friend, companion, clear comprehension, or in the Pali word is sampajanya. Now, sometimes when I go somewhere to a monastery, then they put up on a big whiteboard Ajahn Jayasaro and his disciples. But sometimes they put up a sign saying Ajahn Jayasaro, meaning that his disciples is in a kind of brackets or parenthesis, and sometimes not even included. Now, why I'm telling you this is because often the word sati is used with sampajanya implied in parentheses. They have to go together, really. So sati is not a part of the wisdom training. Sati or mindfulness belongs to the section of concentration or samadhi. It is sampajanya which is the representative of the wisdom training in this level of Buddhist meditation. So what does sati mean? What does mindfulness mean? Mindfulness means not forgetting. What does sampajanya mean? It means not being deluded, getting lost. One translation for sampajanya, apart from clear comprehension, which I like a lot, is alertness, that sense of wakefulness, clarity, knowing. So mindfulness means bearing in mind, not forgetting. So what are you not forgetting? You're not forgetting whatever you need to remember in any particular situation. Now, in daily life, it might be you're not forgetting what your duties, your responsibilities are. In meditation, it means you're not forgetting the task that you've set yourself. In particular, the being with the meditation object without letting it go, even for a moment. So, apart from that, not forgetting the present object, the meditation object, you're also not forgetting the information, the good words of advice that you got from your spiritual teacher. So sati and mindfulness doesn't mean exclusively awareness. It means remembering. In certain cases it's used to mean memory, but here it means remembering what needs to be remembered in order to perform the meditation technique correctly. My sampajanya is a kind of like quality control. It's a kind of alertness. If your mind is starting to get a little bit blurred, a little bit fuzzy, you're going to get a little bit bored, or you're just losing your balance or your focus, that awareness of that's the sampajanya, that's the alertness that the quality is slipping. So these two factors are working together in the meditation object. The third factor, very important, is the sense of constant, balanced, appropriate effort. And the amount of effort that you need to be putting in moment by moment will vary depending upon the state, the level of mindfulness. Sometimes you need to be putting a little bit more effort in, sometimes to be balancing it a little bit more, or being more relaxed. And the traditional simile given here is you have a small bird in your hand. If you hold it too tightly, you'll hurt the bird, it might even die. If you open your hand, it'll fly away. So how do you hold that bird in such a way that it doesn't fly away, that you don't hurt it? That's the simile for the kind of effort that you need to be making and constantly adjusting on this level of meditation. So one of the initial challenges in meditation for everyone really is agitation, and the mind's rushing all over the place, completely crazed, as it were. And you think, sometimes you think, well, my mind wasn't like this before I started to meditate. And of course the answer to that is it was, but you never really looked closely enough to see it. Anyway, what do you do if the mind is so agitated? Well, one, don't panic, because that'll make it worse. So yeah, it's like this. This is just the way the normal, untrained mind is. You're completely normal. Almost everyone's been through this. It's not just you. But there are certain things that you can do. Now, if we take the mindfulness of breathing as a basic object, now that's quite a subtle object, and it can be quite difficult to persuade the mind to stay with the breath. or to find a skillful means in which you're happier to be with the breath than with other things. And just the whole sort of tumult of thought is just sometimes just too much to deal with. Now, with the breath, one adaptation of the simple breath meditation is to count the breaths. So on the in-breath you count 1, on the out-breath you count 1, in-breath 2, out-breath 2, in-breath 3, out-breath 3, in-breath 4, out-breath 4, in-breath 5, out-breath 5, and then you start again, and you count 1, 1, 2, 2, up to 6, 6, and then you start again and count 1, 1, 2, up to 7, 7, then 1 to 8, then 1 to 9, and then 1 to 10. Now, of course, if you get lost in the middle, you have to go back to the beginning. So you set yourself a little goal to see whether you can make one cycle, meaning you count 1 to 5, 1 to 6, 1 to 7, 1 to 8, 1 to 9, 1 to 10, without getting lost. And this is, I think, a useful technique in many ways. One is because you're changing the number that you're counting up to so frequently. You have to be right on top of it, otherwise you forget, am I counting up to 6, am I counting up to 7? So if you get lost, you know very quickly. Sometimes with other meditation or with the breath itself, you can just sort of drift along with it, or even with a mantra, for instance, like Buddha, and it can take some time before you realize you've got lost. Here you're forced to acknowledge that you can't remember where you are. So it means that the mind doesn't have the same opportunity to race around the universe in the way with a kind of a looser kind of technique would. Secondly, one of the difficulties in meditation is some means of gauging progress. It can be so kind of up and down, and very easy to get discouraged. But here you have some clear-cut way of judging whether you're making any progress. So to begin with, even just to do it one cycle, and you can't do it. But after a while, yes, you can do it one cycle, then you try 2 cycles, you try 3 cycles, and seeing that you're making some kind of progress gives you a real fillip and gives you some inspiration to carry on. Now what will happen is that if you persevere with this, after a few cycles you start to feel it rather constricting and irritating, and your mind just naturally lets go of the counting, the agitation is gone, and now you're ready to be with the breath in a more intimate and natural way. Have you noticed, on buses and trains and planes, particularly on planes, after you've eaten what they've got to they give you to eat, you've read what you read, you watch the movie, what does everybody do? They fall asleep. Because most people's minds are dependent on external stimuli. That's the way they stay awake. No stimuli, they fall asleep. So this inevitably is a problem when you meditate, when your meditation object is not incredibly exciting, and it's intentionally unexciting. So what happens is your mind shifts between 2 modes, that of agitation and sleepiness. You finally get through all the agitation, you see finally, now you're getting somewhere, and you get dull and drowsy and maybe fall asleep. And again, normal, almost everybody goes through this at some time or other. The people who sit really straight and don't seem to have any problem with sleepiness are usually the ones that are thinking a lot, rather than they're particularly peaceful. And so what do? Well, one thing is you don't panic, you don't get depressed, you don't think that you're hopeless. You think, yeah, well, this is the way the mind is, it's like this. We never built up that kind of strength to be alert, bright and awake in the present moment without external stimuli. Now's the time to learn. Now, one of the practical bits of advice I would give you is that before we become really sleepy and dull, we're nodding, or the situation gets really out of hand, there are some more subtle signs. And so if you're really sensitive to what's going on in your body and in your mind, moment by moment, then you can nip it in the bud. So just as before the rain comes down, then it gets cloudy and there's a bit of a breeze whips up, and you know from experience that it's probably going to rain, time to get in your washing. So similarly, you begin to get these signs of a little bit of heaviness of the body, dullness, a little bit of boredom, certain signs that tell you now is the time to beware of drowsiness and dullness. If it's something that comes up a lot, then tell yourself at the beginning, just talk to yourself a little bit at the beginning of meditations. If you have particular problems like sleepiness, you say, watch out for that one. You know, this is the time of day, or this is something that's probably going to come up in this meditation session. And just priming your mind like that can often work as a prophylactic, can prevent it arising so easily, or helps you to become aware of it much more quickly. Another method is to use the perception of light. So as you breathe in, you breathe out. Breathe in your whole body. Don't breathe with concentration and attention on one particular spot, say at the tip of your nose, but feel the breath in your whole body, every part of your body is filled with light. You breathe in and your whole body filled with light. You breathe out and light is spreading out through every part of your body. So you're directly countering the dullness and the darkness and the heaviness and the sloth and torpor with the perception of light. One other technique that you may use is to leave the breath altogether and to adopt a meditation technique which uses discursive thought. The metta meditation can be very good for this purpose, in that it can bring up some very strong positive feelings very quickly. But one in which you give the mind something to do, you give it some work. You say, okay, if you're dull, you're bored, you want something a little bit more interesting, okay, I'll give it to you, but it's got to be something that lies within the sphere of meditative contemplation. So these are just a few short recommendations for dealing with sleepiness. Metta means loving kindness. Means wishing well, wishing all beings to be happy. And metta differs from love generally, in that it is not directed solely to one person or one group of people. But having said that, you usually start off with meditation following the principle that you start off with the easy and work towards the difficult. Now, if you're someone who is racked with self-aversion and you're not very good friends with yourself, then the traditional recommendation to begin with, spreading metta to yourself, might not work for you. If it doesn't, it doesn't matter, but at least give it a try. Think of all the good, the noble, beautiful things that you would like to develop in your life, and wish them to yourself. May I be peaceful, may I be kind, may I be wise, may I be good. All those things that you aspire to in your life, and wish them sincerely for yourself. And as you develop this sense of warmth, then feel as if you're breathing in and breathing out through the chest area, and feel you're breathing in goodness and happiness and light and brightness, and you're breathing out, and all that kindness and goodness and nobility is streaming out from the heart area, out in all directions. Now, this is one way to begin the metta meditation. Another is to take someone that you look up to, someone you respect, better if it's someone of your own sex, so that more worldly feelings won't creep up on you and undermine the metta. But you could take a puppy or a cat or any kind of living creature, that when you think of that person or that creature, you just feel that kind of very warm, lovely kind of loving kindness feeling that I'm sure you have some experience of, and you take that as your object and you try to expand it. Now, to begin with, you just take one object, this person, a particular person, could be yourself, could be the puppy or whatever, and develop this warmth and kindness, breathing in, breathing out for this creature. After a while, if it starts to get a little bit stale, then you can move back to yourself or to some other loved one. So to begin with, we want to create the ability to sustain this sense of warmth and loving kindness before developing it further and spreading loving kindness to associates, people to whom we have no strong feeling for, or eventually to those people who we have some problem with, that we have some anger towards or feel upset with. So there are many different ways, and this is just a very short introduction to metta, and you can be creative and you can try different things out. You don't necessarily have to follow the books, but there is to summarize, there is one way where you start off developing loving kindness for yourself, for the respected one, for the loved one, for family members, and so on, and gradually expanding it out to all the people in this monastery or this town, to this city, this country, this world, the different levels of beings. So that method is using a certain amount of discursive thought to keep the meditation on track. The other one is that the other method is that once you identify with this feeling, and this is what metta means, this warmth, this very positive, loving feeling, then you can take that particular feeling as your meditation object, without using the discursive thought and without spreading it to particular individuals or groups and so on. And that is a way which will lead to great peace and bliss within the mind. Okay. The sitting posture is one in which you find a great variety of opinions, and in some Buddhist schools they make great emphasis on sitting full lotus and sitting a particular way, and everything is very closely defined. Whereas in Thai forest tradition, that's not really the case. That there is no clear or precise instructions about how you sit, other than that you can sit straight and you can sit still. So basically, whatever posture that you can adopt, given your own physical size, illnesses you might have, or whatever, those are the two principles that I think are important. You should be able to sit straight, and you should be able to sit still. Now, you can arrange your legs or your hands in any way, really, as long as you stick to those two principles. Although some ways of holding the hands, particularly with the thumbs lightly touching each other, is helpful, because if you lose mindfulness, as you probably will, or inevitably will, then your thumbs will fall apart. So it's a kind of early warning system that your mindfulness is slipping. But some people find it a little bit tense and disturbing to sit like that, and it's not peaceful for them, so it doesn't matter really. Now, you want to be able to sit still, because the stillness of the body promotes stillness of mind. And particularly in the first few minutes of the meditation session, make that a point not to move at all. And overcoming that initial physical restlessness does help to a certain extent to lay the foundations for the overcoming of mental restlessness. The straightness of the posture is important, because although the way that you place your legs or your hands doesn't have an immediate effect upon your mind. It's easy to see that if you're sitting slumped over and not straight, then sleepiness, dullness very easily takes over the mind. And indeed, if you're feeling a little bit dull, that's the first thing you look at. Are you sitting up straight? So, straightness and stillness. You don't want to be leaning against anything, because the posture, again, is hopefully giving you a sense of self-reliance. This is another mental factor, a mental trait, which you can help to promote through the way that you sit. So, not when I say straight, then it's not like ramrod straight, and so you don't want to be sitting in a way that you're impeding the breathing process or you're feeling tense. You want that that balance between effort and relaxation that comes with a good posture. So have somebody look at your posture, because sometimes you can feel that you're straight and you're sitting well, but you're not. So if you have a good friend, you say, just can you, when we've been meditating for a few minutes, can you just have a look and see, am I straight, am I tilting to one side or another? Because small postural imbalances can, in the long term, lead to aches and pains in your back, and can be unnecessarily obstructive. So posture is important, not to get obsessive about it or to give it too much importance, but looking at ways, how can you sit in such a way that you feel stable, you feel still, you feel self-reliant, and in a way that you can maintain for 30 minutes, an hour, or even more than an hour, without doing any mischief to your body. Okay. Meditation is not a all or nothing, white or black experience. It's life. It's like you're looking at yourself in the microscope. You're learning about your experience, about yourself. And so it's not a matter of, if you find some peaceful mental state in meditation, you're successful, and if you don't, you're a failure. Because a lot of the obstructions and difficulties that come up in applying a meditation technique are actually great treasures, because you're learning very important things and skills that you can make use of in your daily life. And one particular area is that of dealing with pain. We all have strategies for dealing with pain. Most of them are unconscious, that we've adopted since we were children, and sometimes it's quite sobering to see how unsuccessful and even immature our reactions to pain are. So we're putting ourselves in a position where, yes, we're going to experience some physical discomfort at certain times during the sitting, sometimes more than others, and we want to really understand the nature of this unpleasantness, rather than saying, I don't want this, and just get up straight away, because in life, when we get sick, when we get old, we're not going to have that option. So let's learn about it now while we're still reasonably healthy. And the most important observation or insight, I think, that we make is that pain is not a purely physical phenomena. It has a large mental component or contribution, and that we can see, I think, quite easily, even outside meditation. If you're watching a movie, you can sit quite still or reasonably still for maybe 2 or 3 hours without feeling any great discomfort, because your mind is elsewhere. Whereas in meditation, your mind is not elsewhere. You're right here. And what we can see is that the same kind of physical difficulty can be experienced sometimes as tormenting, and other times as a minor irritation. and that is because of the mental reaction to the pain. Reactions which are almost automatic and can vary from day to day or vary from person to person. But the kinds of things that are arising are aversion, fear, anxiety, or sense of people. Why me? Why nobody else? Why does everybody else seem to be sitting so peacefully? Why do I have to deal with this every time I meditate? So there are all kinds of habitual and accumulated responses to physical discomfort that we're starting to illuminate through sitting with it. Now, briefly, there are two main ways of dealing with pain, and these correspond to the two kind of aspects of meditation: the tranquilizing, pacifying aspect, and the insight, the looking, the observing, the penetrating, the nature of things. So, with the first strategy, if the pain is not particularly piercing and oppressive, sometimes just bringing the mind back to the meditation object very patiently, every time it strays to the pain, can be successful. But if the pain is a little bit more intense, then we can practice breathing through the pain, or developing loving kindness, that sense of kindness and love and affection, and being a friend to the pain. So adopting a skillful, constructive attitude to the pain to remove or to replace the habitual negative reaction to it. So using a positive emotion which can be allied to the breath, and breathing in and breathing out as if through the area of pain with a very positive, accepting, kind attitude. So that's two possible techniques of the calming strategy. Now the other strategy is to say, okay, I'm going to leave my meditation object, the breath, the mantra, or whatever, and I'm going to take up pain as my object of meditation. And what you want to be doing in this case is to be looking particularly at the impermanence of the pain. Now there are three aspects of this. First, the nature of the pain. Pain, when we start looking at it, it's not just this hard single mass. We can see that there are different kinds of pain. There are shooting pains, burning pains, aching pains, and so on. And the nature of the pain is changing, and seeing that change is a way of reducing the attachment and the negative emotions that have become one and the same thing with this feeling in the mind lacking awareness. The second aspect is the location of the pain. Again, we can see that it's not just one single point; it's moving around, and we can see how the pain can be quite a complex phenomena. And we can notice that if we tighten up around the pain in reaction to it, then there can be secondary pains arising in other parts of the body as a result of that. Then the third aspect is the intensity of the pain. So if you take that simple 1 to 10 kind of standard, notice that the intensity of the pain is also not stable. Often pain's coming in waves. So looking at impermanence in terms of the nature of the pain, a particular characteristic of the pain, the location of the pain and the intensity of the pain, this is giving the mind work to do. looking at the impermanence of the phenomena. Now this is revealing the truth of what's going on more clearly to us, which is purifying in itself. But similarly with the calming technique, what's happening on a psychological realm, if you like, is that the mind can only have one interest at a time. So when you give your mind some work, some insight work to do, it can't at the same time be worrying and feeling averse and full of self-pity and so on. So there is also this replacement process taking place. So I would say in conclusion that working with pain is not something that you want to be doing very often, particularly in early days as meditation, because your attitude to meditation and your enjoyment of meditation is probably the most important condition for you being able to maintain a steady, regular meditation practice. If you start to conceive of meditation as being a daily struggle with pain, before long you'll probably find some good reasons to cut down the sessions or to eliminate the sessions altogether, because nobody wants to have to deal with that on such a regular basis. So every now and again take on pain as a meditation object. It's an important part of meditation, a good skill to learn. But other times, it's particularly if your mind feels it's really starting to calm down and settle down, you've got some awareness there, then very mindfully change posture. So it's not something that you have to do every time that you meet pain, but it's something that you should have some experience of dealing with. Many years ago, I had a guest at Wat Banana Chat for the night. It was Lumpur Liam, the abbot of Wat Bapong, the Dhamma heir successor to Ajahn Chah. And I was telling him that many Western people have a real problem in their practice, in that they have a lot of self-aversion and that they think that they're worthless. And so I translated. I was speaking in Thai, and so Ajahn Liam looked at me in his inimitable way, and he said, "But they are worthless." He said, "We're all worthless," and this is a kind of startling point of view, perhaps, but it very much reflects the way that we deal with experience. Now, our habit and the way that we're taught and our education is very much concerned with content. And in our experience, the content of our thoughts, our memories, our imagination, we give us great importance. But in meditation, we're shifting the focus from content to process. And one way I've developed of talking about this is saying, looking at everything in your experience as a verb rather than a noun. There are no nouns in Buddhism, okay? So your mind, your ego, your thoughts, these are all verbs, okay? They're not nouns. Now to put that in a slightly more traditional way, everything that arises passes away. And in meditation, I spoke previously about the importance of a foundation of sila and scrupulous and care about the way that one relates to the world around one as an important foundation for mindfulness. But the second one that my teacher Ajahn Chah would stress very much is right view. And right view can be expounded upon at great length. But to put it very simply, is everything that arises passes away. And it's from that viewpoint, you say everything is of the same value. So you could say everything is infinitely valuable, or you can say everything is worthless. I mean, it's more or less the same thing. But in meditation, it's like going on a journey, an inner journey, and you start to experience strange things, perhaps experiences that are a little bit unusual. Maybe your body starts to feel extremely light, like you're floating up into the air, or you may feel your body's very heavy, or you're sinking down into the earth, or you may feel that certain parts of your body disappear altogether, like an arm's disappeared or a leg's disappeared. And if your mind becomes very peaceful, then your whole sense of the physical body disappears. So these in themselves are not problems. It's just this same old thing. Everything that arises passes away. And if you maintain that awareness that whatever arises and passes away is not self, it's not me, it's not mine, it's not nirvana, it's not ultimate truth, it's not what you're looking for. It's the stuff that you are finding ways to deal with wisely by abandoning attachment. So that means that if you could have a vision, perhaps, of being in the presence of the Buddha himself. You could have a vision of hungry ghosts with their thin necks and their big bellies asking you for some kind of help and assistance. And whatever that experience may be, whether it's a visual phenomena, an oral phenomena, a physical phenomena, whatever in whatever guise it may appear, although the content may vary incredibly from something incredibly inspiring and wonderful and something which is quite frightening and puzzling and so on, then your refuge is always whatever arises passes away. It's not self, it's not me, it's not mine, this is not what I'm seeking in meditation. Now, because we are experienced junkies, and the whole idea of enlightenment is perhaps presented as a sort of the ultimate experience. So many people embark on meditation looking for special experiences and looking on special experiences as some kind of validation, or something to tell your friends about even. But that's not the point. It's not the point what the content of your experience is. It's how you deal with it and whether you can maintain that clear-seeing eye that whatever rises passes away. You're not emotionally investing in it. You're not giving it undue importance and significance. You're saying, yes, it's just that. It's just the way it is. This is the way the mind is. Oh, that's interesting. That's unusual. But however strange and unusual and weird experiences might be, they're just the same old stuff. They're just stuff that arises and passes away. It's all, as Ajahn Liam told me, we are. It's all worthless. It's just the same stuff. So it's a radical recognition and a realignment of the way you look at experiences. And by the way, the weird and strange experiences don't arise for some people, or very, very few of them do. And that's not a sign that you're somehow spiritually impoverished, and someone who has all these kind of amazing experiences is doing a lot better than you. There are all kinds of causes and conditions which affect these things. It's your relationship towards them rather than their particular nature which is the important thing. When you can isolate or become aware of the nature of mindfulness, which is not forgetting the instructions, not forgetting the technique, not forgetting what's going on right now, not forgetting the breath, for instance, when you have this sampajanya, this clear comprehension, alertness, wakefulness, sharpness of mind, which acts as a sort of quality control, when you have this regulated and balanced effort, which is constantly being realigned for the optimum results, then meditation becomes a little bit easier, because when you have experiences of various kinds, then these are measures of the validity and the usefulness of them. You know, you're checking in what's the mindfulness, the clear comprehension, the effort, and I would say that as meditators on this internal journey, that no one's quite the same as anyone else, and even the Buddha's instructions, you know, are not for everybody. They're not sort of, we can say that they're inscribed in palm leaves and then in books and in computer disks, but I believe at the time of the Buddha, because I'm speaking from my very limited experience as a teacher, that if you're teaching to 100 people, you can't give individual instructions. You can't tailor a general talk to the every single person, and also you take what's going to be valid for maybe 80 or 90% of the people. I think because that's the case, then we can be willing to experiment a little and don't feel inhibited that, oh, this isn't what this teacher says, or this isn't what's in the book, this isn't what's in the Visuddhimagga. That you can, given the guarantors of safety, which are your sila and right view, which you've put a lot of effort into developing, then you can be a little bit more creative, try things out. Now, often the instructions for anapanasati, for breath meditation, is that when you experience, let's say, piti or some rush of great pleasure and happiness in your mind, to be aware of that. Not to say you shouldn't feel happy, that it's going to delude you. Yeah, this is what it's like. This is a very pleasant feeling, and let's say different kinds of lights and colours and things like this. I would say generally to try to return to the breath, but there are certain kinds of experiences which I would say can, and I would say if you have opportunity to converse with, discuss with a good friend or a teacher, this would be important here. If you have an image of the physical body, some part of the body, sometimes you can have images which, conventionally speaking, might be quite disturbing, like a dead body, or a decaying body, or some image concerning the dissolution of the body, or the body in an unattractive aspect. These kinds of images can, for a skillful meditator, be taken up and be used to develop insight and to develop more deeper states of concentration. Now, so that would be one exception to general attitude that I would advocate, of just recognizing whatever arises as it's just that, nothing more, nothing less, and maintaining this interest and loyalty, devotion to the meditation object, in the faith that that meditation object will take you to beyond the hindrances and into deeper levels of concentration. But another point I would like to make is that the very strong waves of piti, or intense sensations of well-being that arise in meditation, can also at times be taken as meditation object. So what I'm trying to say here is that on a general basis I would say stay with the breath, come back to the breath, but there are certain circumstances which you may or may not be able to make use of. One is images of the physical body, particularly in an attractive or a state of decay, and another is strong feelings of well-being or even bliss. Now, when the mind becomes calmer, then for some people it will from there go into states of deep calm. But for other people, then the mind hovers on the edge, and it just applying the effort to a meditation object, it just it falls short. It gets stuck in a way, and in that circumstance, then taking up an insight practice, like investigating the nature of hair of the head, hair of the body, nails, teeth, skin, or perhaps to take up a contemplation of the of impermanence, of dukkha, unsatisfactoriness, or anatta, can just tip the mind over into the very deep state of calm. So there's the whole kind of debate about samatha and vipassana and so on. I don't feel it's such a helpful one, in that sometimes it's the insight practices adopted at crucial points in the effort to calm the mind, which can intensify the calm. And sometimes the calm itself will lead naturally to these insight practices without having to worry too much. What is this? Am I doing samatha? Am I doing vipassana? It's more this, through experience, this sense of awareness of what the mind needs at that particular moment for the progress on the middle path. I think it's quite useful to look at thinking as a kind of a drug or as an addiction. And we're addicted to thought, and we're afraid if we don't think, we'll just disappear. So that this is why there's difficulty about meditation so much, not sort of lack of technique, but the willingness to apply it. But if we look at thinking as an addiction, then I think we can also compare it with the different strategies people have for abandoning addictions. Let's compare it, say, with smoking. Now, one way of giving up smoking is just to say, right, from today I'm never going to smoke another cigarette. Okay, and some people can do that, some people can't. But another strategy that some people use is, say, smoking 20 cigarettes today, tomorrow I'm going to smoke 19 and 18. You just gradually reduce the number from 20 to 0 so that you don't have this sudden jolt and sort of cold turkey experience. Now, I think this can be applied to meditation, that if you take a meditation object such as the breath, or a meditation word, maybe used in conjunction with the breath, like Buddha, then it's like giving up cigarettes all at one go. You're not giving any space at all to the thinking mind at all. Whereas sometimes the power, the momentum of thought is so strong, it's just basically the mind wants to think, it needs to think at this time. And using that first technique of the breath can be frustrating and not very successful. So what can you do? You use a meditation technique which employs thinking. So the only thing to bear in mind here is you have to think systematically. You have to follow a train of thought. It doesn't mean thinking this, thinking that, basically on a subject of Dhamma, because the mind will not become clear and calm in that way. But if you're taking the 32 parts of the body, or the first 5 parts of the body, hair of the head, hair of the body, nails, teeth and skin, and investigating them one by one, considering them in terms of impermanence or unattractiveness, not self, for instance, and allowing the mind to think and to imagine and to expand upon those themes one by one, or taking the subject of death, the fact, the inevitability of our death, the uncertainty of the time or the particular cause of death, and so on. These kinds of discursive meditations can allow us to gradually reduce our addiction to thinking. And if you follow one of these meditations through in that kind of systematic way, and sometimes before beginning this kind of meditation, you can maybe write down a few points, point 1, point 2, point 3, point 4, and to do it in a bit of an artificial way until after a certain amount of practice you become fluent at it and you don't have to think in that way. Then you reach a certain point where it's as if the mind just gets bored of thinking. It's just like the thinking's a heavy weight and you just, I don't want this anymore. And you just put down the burden of thought, and then the mind can go to the non-discursive objects such as the breath in a very complete, enthusiastic, committed kind of way. So dealing with the addiction of thought by cutting it off right at the beginning, by turning the mind to the breath or some physical sensation or some word or some concept, or else using discursive thought in a very systematic, step-by-step manner until the mind puts down thinking with a sigh of relief. So the most important thing is that you meditate every day, even if it's for a very short time. Maintain that sense of continuity, because it's continuity that really tells in the long run. It's easy to get very inspired with meditation and to throw yourself into it and to meditate every day for a certain period of time, but to maintain that for months or years is another matter. Now, some people feel they're failures in meditation, so what does that mean? I think the only way to fail in meditation is to stop meditating. Other than that, you're successful. Maybe not as successful as you'd like to be, but you are successful in that you've managed to create the interest and the commitment and the patience to carry on with something which is not always very easy. Now, when is the best time for a meditation session? It's common in Buddhist countries for people to meditate before they go to sleep. And that's a very good calming technique. It means you probably won't have to use sleeping pills, and you'll sleep well. So it has benefits on a physical level, stress reduction level. But in terms of integration, integrating meditation experiences, meditation skills into daily life, the problem is you wake up the next morning, it's like a new chapter in your life. There's no sense of continuity. So I'm not advocating you give up meditation before you go to sleep, but what's really important is first thing in the morning, because you've rested, you're fresh, you don't have very much going on in your mind. It's a really good time to meditate. So you get up in the morning, you do a few stretches, wash your face, or just prepare yourself, and then begin your meditation session. If you have a particular room or a particular corner of a room, a space which is devoted to chanting, meditation, or whatever, and in which you don't do anything else at all, psychologically that's very helpful, because just sitting in that space, in that place, helps you to focus on what you're doing. It is, I think, skillful to learn some of the basic Pali chants. Some of the important chants are translated into English, and you can find those on websites. And just to do a short period of chanting as a way of just focusing the mind, preparing the mind for the meditation. It doesn't, and that the length of time you spend on chanting it depends on you whether you enjoy it or not. So remember, you should enjoy your meditation, because if you don't, you won't be able to keep it up for very long. So the idea is that you reach a point where you would consider missing your morning meditation on a par with missing breakfast, or even more tragic than missing breakfast. So before you meditate, just talk to yourself internally a little bit, just about what you're doing, why you're doing it, what your goals are, what are the possible problems and challenges that are likely to arise. So sometimes you don't need that, but sometimes otherwise you can waste a lot of time just sort of stray thoughts and sort of lack of clarity about what you're doing, a bit of fuzziness, which, particularly if you're pushed for time, is wasteful and unnecessary. So just come back. What am I actually doing here? What do I want to apply my mind to? What do I not want to apply my mind to? What do I need to be very careful about? For instance, early morning sleepiness, for instance, and then start to pass your attention from top of the head down through the body, and just say hello, say good morning to your body before you start, because your body is what you're using for meditation. And just a sense of basic well-being, sitting straight, sitting still, that sense of self-reliance, straight like a mountain, not straight like a rod, the sense of the balance between effort and relaxation. And then apply yourself to meditation object. And most important is your attitude to the meditation object. Don't think you've got to concentrate on it, you've got to drive thoughts out of your mind. Don't get into a very sort of violent or oppressive sort of relationship with your meditation object. In the case of the breath, one analogy, this is an example of a way of looking at the breath. Imagine a doctor in a third world country with a great long line of patients waiting outside his cubicle, and he sees one patient, or she sees one patient at a time, and gives absolute attention to every single patient, without interest in whether they're rich, they're poor, whether they seem charming or seem difficult, irascible, or whatever. And so if you take one breath at a time and look at each breath as a doctor would examine each patient with absolute respect, absolute care, then you'll begin to get an idea of what it means to be with the breath, and your meditation will start to take off, I hope. Meditation practice has many benefits, beginning with the benefits to one's health. It's generally acknowledged now that many illnesses are conditioned by psychosomatic causes, and it seems that meditation does have a beneficial effect on the immune system. It's also an extremely effective way of dealing with stress. So health benefits, stress reduction benefits, these are the initial fruits that we can find arising from meditation. But this is just the beginning, really. The Buddha said that if your mind is still affected by what we call the hindrances, various negative emotions, then not only are you incapable of realizing any true lasting peace in your life, but also you don't inward know what's what. You don't have a clear understanding of the nature of your life, the world you live in. So meditation is aiming at taking the mind beyond negative emotions, using the power of effort, mindfulness, and developing the various wholesome qualities. So in meditation, it's as if you're looking at your mind in a microscope. In daily life, it's very hard to have any really profound insight into what's going on, because there's just so much externally going on. And it's as if you're trying to track a moving body across a very colourful background. It's not very easy to do that, whereas if you have a very plain background and a grid, as in a radar screen, then you can follow something very clearly. And to return to the previous analogy, when you start to meditate and looking at the nature of the mind moment by moment, then the various obsessions, worries, anxieties, fears, aversions and so on become illuminated by the power of attention. So you are beginning to see clearly just the way your mind works, what attitudes, what thoughts, what emotions actually contribute to your happiness and are actually in harmony with the goals that you've set for yourself in your life, and what's going on which is actually undermining your happiness and obstructing your ability to realize your goals and aspirations in life. So it's when you close your eyes, it's not going off into a dream world. What you're actually doing is embarking on a quest to realize the real world. Where is the real world? You know, what's that all about? What's really happening in your life? So there's a sense of quest, interest to really understand, to see, to realize the way things are, not as a philosophical enterprise, not as an intellectual exercise, but something that is stressing very much direct experience. Understanding our life as a direct experience can only come through the purification of the mind, the abandoning of agitation and negative emotions. So in the beginning stages of meditation, we're applying these techniques, looking at the breath, maintaining and sustaining attention on the breath, for instance, in order to take the mind beyond its usual habits and obsessions. And when that mind is calm, clear, bright, happy, then the mind has sufficient resources to be able to look very directly at impermanence, at non-self, and on the basic elements of existence, which are usually covered over by the mass of thought and agitation and emotion and desires and fears and so on, which make up most people's ordinary existence. So it's a path of transformation, a path of liberation, a path of letting go. And those words sound very high and inspiring, but the path towards them is not so wonderful. It's this hard work and willingness to be with one breath at a time. So it's one step at a time, one breath at a time, and gradually, by observing, by looking closely, you begin to see what is actually going on, and the skills that you learn, the clarity around the inner motivations and the inner events of your daily life, in your meditation, meaning your daily life, you have an acquaintance with them, you have a sharpness, you have an ability to pick up what's going on in your relationships with other people and in your daily life, and to apply those calming techniques, the ability to let go of attachments and so on, in an effective way in your daily life. Without the strengthening and the profound, precise work that you do in the meditation, it's very hard to develop that kind of awareness, or it's impossible to develop that kind of awareness in daily life. So daily life practice and daily meditation practice are in effect one and the same thing.